There's been this fascinating trend in recent decades, which I've been talking about for years, albeit less frequently in recent years, but you can go find some old John Doyle content talking about radicalization, right? Like the GOP becoming maybe more conservative while the Democrat Party is becoming more liberal. Again, this is like opinion polling. Whether the GOP is becoming more conservative and actually able to manifest conservative victories in the last few decades is a different conversation. The point being, they're going like this, right? The parties are getting further apart from each other, and the GOP only recently is actually able to do anything about it. So that is like data. It's also my personal experience, personal observations. We are not going to silence the lived experience of a white man on the John Doyle Show. Everywhere else in the world, not the John Doyle Show. If there is one white man speaking and giving his opinion, it is on the John Doyle Show. If there are no white men left speaking and giving their opinions, the John Doyle Show has been canceled and taken off the air. But according to Gallup, which has been asking, questions, right? Just asking questions, Gallup News, trademark, about, the party affiliation, political ideology, whatever, since like 1994, sort of the Clinton era, Gingrich era. We're currently at the highest recorded level of political polarization since they began collecting this data, which, maybe if we went back a little bit further, that would be more illuminating, but start your own Gallup. The point being, in 1994, 58% of Republicans described themselves as very conservative or at least conservative. By 2024, that figure had risen to 77%, which is up nearly 10 points from when Trump announced his intention to run for president in 2015. And again, this is proof of what I've been saying for probably about that long, actually, which is that Donald Trump is simply like the best thing to happen to the American right basically ever. He objectively made the GOP more right-wing, especially on the issues that actually matter, like immigration, race, crime, things of that nature. And moreover, he's actually able to command the party to do the will of the people who elected him, which, again, we have not seen that in our lifetime. I don't even want to think of where we would be right now were it not for the descent from the golden escalator. I don't even want to imagine that scenario. A world without Trump, genuinely nightmare scenario. I would shroon out immediately had things gone a little bit differently in Butler. On that timeline, without Trump, if any one of these efforts to stop Trump actually succeeded, the situation is like literally completely hopeless. Like, we literally should be thanking God that we are in this situation rather than any one of the alternatives that these people tried to create for us. And Democrats underwent a similar shift also, from the center. Only in that time span, like in 1994, only 25% of liberals identified as like very liberal or at least liberal. By 2024, 55% of liberals describe themselves in such terms. And just like with Republicans, this is marking like a 10-point increase from 2015. And you can probably chalk that up to, Trump also. Like he is making us more conservative. He's making them more reactionary to the fact that we are becoming more conservative and also effective in our conservative politics. And as we know, he's turned countless like previously moderate liberals into like hysterical libtard freaks. I mean, people that you used to respect, people that used to be intelligent, these people are now like literally they've had their minds completely broken. Just scroll Twitter if you don't believe me. Maybe you even know a few in your personal life, relatives you used to respect, people you used to dine with, and now they're like literally insane. But the suffering that these people experience is the direct consequence of rejecting that like providential figure, which is Donald Trump. Like those of us on the other side, we haven't exactly had it as easy, but it's been an incredible ride. Like seriously, who do you think has had more fun since 2016? The right or the left? If you measure it even just by that, like we're winning, like it's not even close. However, Gallup's data reveals something else, which is that the percent of Democrats identifying as very liberal or liberal increased by 20 points from 1994 to 2015. During that time frame, Republicans who identified as very conservative or conservative, that only increased by 10 points. And so what that's telling us is that the left's radicalization happened before the right's. So while Trump certainly did accelerate this process, he is not the only cause of that. He did not start the fire, so to speak. And as I've been saying for years, the Trump phenomenon is best understood as a response actually to this like escalating left-wing insanity, whether it's Black Lives Matter, to Barack Hussein Obama and his anti-white housing policies, not to mention decades of mass illegal immigration against the will of the public consistently. It's understandable why Americans elected Donald Trump 3 times. That like makes perfect sense to me. And to that you might say, but John, didn't like 7 days ago you come out and say that accelerationism is bad? If things are getting worse and we get Donald Trump, how is that not acceleration? Shouldn't we continue to make things worse? No, we shouldn't. The reason for that is because Donald Trump triggered the boss fight. Things were getting pretty bad. Trump had been saying for 40 years that if it got so bad, he'd have to step in. Okay, now for better or worse, Donald John Trump has triggered the boss fight. What that means is that household wealth, or rather household name recognition, tremendous wealth, all of that stuff is going to have a target placed on it, which was not the case when Donald Trump was like preparing his run for the presidency. Moreover, nobody took him seriously until it was too late. He was written off by everybody. They played his clips because they were sort of brash. They were outlandish. It was great content. They did not take his political project seriously until it was too late. They have learned from their mistakes, and now they target allies. They persecute allies. They persecute even grassroots patriots, people working towards the cause. No one is going to emerge from the woodwork when things get worse, as we discussed in that monologue after Donald Trump. The fight is on. We don't really have time to re-strategize. Again, you can lament that Trump triggered the boss fight. Nonetheless, he triggered the boss fight, and the only way is through. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And it's also important to keep in mind when sort of considering the decades that led up to Trump in the first place. Like previously, there used to be a pretty broad consensus on certain basic civilizational positions. Like most Americans, Republicans or Democrat, used to agree that like child transgenderism, for instance, wasn't really a thing that we should take seriously, let alone promote everywhere. I'm sure for most of American history, like the very idea of child transgenderism was like so far outside the bounds of political discourse that people would not even believe you that like it was a thing that was even conceivable. Like that is like a myth, right? Most Americans also used to agree that like marriage was between a man and a woman. Obama even like affirmed his support for traditional marriage when he was running during his first and even second presidential campaigns on crime. There was broad consensus that crime is bad. In most cases, police were the good guys. Law and order is like probably a good thing. It's like necessary to keep our streets safe. Even Joe Brandon supported the 94 crime bill, which massively boosted funding for law enforcement across the country, which actually is something I remember conservatives like attacking him for in the past 5 years or so, trying to like pander to, you know, get black people to become like based MAGA patriots or whatever. And we love our black based MAGA patriots. I'm just saying, you know, this is completely retarded, right? Like supporting the 94 crime bill was easily the best thing Biden ever did in his political career. We were allowed to say that. But I think the concept of Democrats being tough on crime is so foreign to some conservatives that they just assume that, you know, is something that was like bad and we have to attack Biden for having supported it. Like when I see these boomers on the timeline, and it's like, all right, you beautiful patriot with your beautiful patriot heart, you know, let's just like relax a little bit and think things through maybe before posting next time. And I also understand that it is mass immigration that has enabled the Democrats to become so radical because they no longer have to appeal to the sensibilities of normal white American Christians. They've imported a permanent underclass that will support them no matter what they do, so long as they facilitate a transfer of wealth from white American Christian patriots to them. I understand that. But we can still talk about sort of the resultant fruits of the Democrat Party as a machine and why patriots are poised to like completely crush them into the ground forever, because we're sending back that permanent underclass, which is why they're shrieking, because one of their columns of power is under attack, like we discussed a year ago when Trump was taking power. And we used to agree on all of that, right? Those sensibilities. I mean, even strong borders. That doesn't even mean that every Democrat was like a freaking based, like, you know, border hawk or whatever, but things used to be a lot different. For example, like, you know, CIS states that Bill Clinton actually deported far more illegals than not only Obama, but also Bush, which I actually believe. I actually like believe that's true. While Senator in New York, Hillary Clinton, she voted for the Secure Fence Act, which resulted in like 700 miles of fencing along the southern border. Both Hillary and Obama, of course, reversed their positions on this in 2008. You already know how Hillary and like the collective Democrat Party machine reacted to Trump's very reasonable build the wall campaign promise in 2016. I'm just saying they were saying those things because there was support for those things among their party. That is no longer the case. And these are just a few issues. You know, we could go through the entire laundry list, but Americans used to like broadly agree on these issues. And these are incredibly important issues. You know, spare me your like bumper sticker stuff. This stuff is a little bit more important, frankly. You know, we're not talking about like corporate tax rates or, you know, ethanol subsidies. We're talking about like whether child mutilation is okay, whether criminals should be allowed to walk freely simply because they're black, whether having a border is okay. Like when the debate shifts from, you know, relatively marginal issues that are fun, you know, we want to play rock'em sock'em, into these like civilizational prerequisites, when those are being called into question, you're in a pretty bad place, right? And that's exactly what's happened in the Democrat Party in the past few decades, which preceded Trump, which Trump is a response to, not a reaction, because we are very normal people. He is a response to that, right? And so that left-wing radicalization is a big part of the reason that things are so insane right now in Minneapolis. Even though Trump won every swing state, he won the popular vote in 2024 running on a mass deportations campaign, there are still quite a few Americans intent on throwing violent temper tantrums anytime someone tries to clean the country up or do anything that, like, I don't know, just should be done. And it really raises the question, what are we going to do with these people? I mean, we can send back the illegals, but there is a not insignificant portion of the American population that is completely insane because of media brainwashing and, you know, prescription medication, SSRIs, birth control. What do we do with that, you know? And the answer is it's fairly obvious to some extent. Like, we're going to send them, obviously, to Gitmo. In fact, we are going to use government money to build more Guantanamo Bays, the Guantanamo Bay Archipelago. We will have like an entire sea of Guantanamo Bays, and we are just going to send all the libtards there. We are going to strap them down and force their eyelids open like Alex DeLarge in A Clockwork Orange. And we are going to force them to watch Fox News and Dan Bongino and the John Doyle show in that order, right? And after a few hundred hours of Gutfeld, right, they will be ready to return to society, to assimilate into polite society. Maybe not. We are not going to send all of them to our new Trump Gitmo locations, but it is true. Some of these people have probably passed the point of no return. So we're joking. We do a little trolling. I obviously would never support sending every single libtard to, you know, Trump Guantanamo Bay, but to undergo a kind of patriot re-education. But again, we have to be honest. That's at least like a solution. That's at least like directionally correct, even if it's not like realistic. It's closer to the truth than whatever else we're talking about, because we do have a ton of radical liberals in America who are never going to change.